My friends and family use words like risk and courage to describe my desire for business ownership. For me, it was much more practical. I wanted to be the one creating jobs instead of looking for them. And I'll admit that up until that point in my life, I had never realized that there was another option. I had never thought about where jobs come from or who creates them. A female friend of mine would quote her mother, "Why be a flight attendant when you can be a pilot?" And it's a great instinct to aspire for more. Why not run the airline? Why not create a whole new airline? Why not create a whole new, better way of transporting people from point A to point B? And so what we're talking about today is we're talking about what is leadership. And this is in a particular style of looking at leadership. For those of you not familiar with the collective engineering process, the idea behind collective engineering is that in our schools, we're taught that teamwork is cheating. And so in our schools, if you are caught working together, you get kicked out and you get in trouble. And so what you're learning in school are the individual skills there on the left side of our slide. When we get into the working world, the skills that really make people successful are more the skills on the right-hand side. And it's a big leap to go from learning your kind of individual skills, your lawyer skills, your sales skills, your accountant skills, to move over to the place where you can actually work with other people. And so I want to kind of continue with this airline analogy for looking at collective engineering and how collective engineering works in this model. And so from the airline example, if you look at pilots and flight attendants or any of the other people that work there, they're really all on the individual skills levels, right? Pilots have learned to be a pilot. They're good at aviation. They're good at wind vectors and those sorts of things. Flight attendants also, it's individual skills. It's customer service. It's how the plane works and safety issues. And so they've learned their individual skills too. So that's really, and when you think about different kinds of jobs, that's where people are. They're at the individual skills level. And what we're talking about today is kind of where do those jobs come from? And so when we leap onto the right side of this graphic, we look at delegate and manage. And for those of you who are following along with this series of webinars, you realize that a lot of what we talk about in delegating and managing, a lot of what we talk about, we've been talking about kind of the first two pieces of collective engineering. So in our airline example, the delegators are the people running the schedule, right? Pilots don't have much say over where they're going to be when. That's up to the people who are managing kind of the operational side of the business. If we look up to the managed level, those are the CEOs. Those are the higher level executives. They're managing the business. They're deciding how many pilots they need. They're deciding how many flight attendants they need. They're deciding which lanes to open and close. They're really responsible for managing the business. If we move up to design, in design we're talking about someone like Southwest. They come up with a new way of running they come up with a new way of running an airline. Somebody came up with a new way in that airline. And if we move up to the inspire level, what we talk about are someone like the Wright brothers, right? They're the ones who created a whole new way of transportation